We won't hear that at the end of class, so I will apologize in advance. I'll try to watch the clock a little bit better. Well, good morning. It's good to be with you all. Once again, I want to thank you all for what you do for our kids. It's always such a blessing to know that they are so well loved and taken care of here. And the new work that you've done in the auditorium is beautiful, and so congratulations on that. But thanks for taking care of our kids. What is faith supposed to do for you? Yep, what is faith supposed to do for you? Make life complete. Yeah, that is actually, we're going to get to that idea of completeness. So it makes life complete. How does faith make life complete? Okay, faith encourages us to do the right thing. Faith provides peace, a calmness, right? In the face of what? When do we need peace the most? Every day. But when do we need peace the most? When there's chaos, when there's trials, right? When there's difficulties. Turn in your Bibles with me to James chapter 1. We're going to look at an aspect of faith this morning that sometimes I don't think we think of very often, but I think we should think about it a lot more than we do. Faith provides us with salvation. There's no doubt about that. James is going to say that in chapter 2. Abraham was justified when his faith caused him to do the things that God wanted him to do. The same was true with Rahab. When she did what her faith demanded of her, she was justified. But there's another aspect of this that I think we miss from a day-to-day aspect that I really want us to focus on today. And that is what happens when things aren't going so well. When life's hard, what does faith provide for us in those moments? And James says it very directly and very clearly. If you'll join me in James chapter 1, starting in verse 2, he says, "Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials." So if we stop there, and I will warn you, this is a trap, but if we stop there, what's he teaching us we're supposed to do when bad things happen? Be joyful. Be glad when bad things happen. Is that the teaching? Is that really what he's saying? I mean, so, you all know, and first of all, thank you all for praying for me. I know you guys have been praying for me for the last couple of years with my foot surgery and with my tumor. My tumor is stable. Everything's great. So we're real excited about that. Answered prayers. But you go to the doctor and you get a diagnosis that you weren't expecting or you didn't want, and you're supposed to be joyful? Is that what James is telling us? That's what it says, isn't it? Consider it joy when you encounter various trials. Is that what he's talking about? It's not completed there. There's a comma there, isn't there? There's not a period at the end of verse 2. And sometimes we read verse 2 like it's got a period at the end of it, and it's not got a period at the end of it. It's not a complete thought yet until we understand what he's saying. Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials. Why? Knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. You see, we have a knowledge that what's really happening in trials. What is really happening in trials? What's going on according to James here? It's a test of what? Our willingness to stand close to God. I agree with that statement 100%. I think there's another aspect of that, though, and that is what's being tested is the trust that God is standing close to us as well. Is that not true? And I think that's an aspect of faith that we don't think about very often. As a matter of fact, probably one of the biggest struggles that I run into as a preacher, as a minister, as an elder in the Lord's church is when people are going through difficult times, I often hear, why is God doing this to me? That you know, in really bad situations, sometimes we have that feeling. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling before, but I know a lot of people have. This idea that when things are at their worst, God is doing something. Or the other aspect of that is that God is not with me. God has left me alone. We know that David felt that way, Psalm 22. We know Jesus echoed that idea on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? We know that God has not forsaken them, according to the rest of Psalm 22, and they knew that God hadn't forsaken them either. But there are times where we feel like we're kind of all by ourselves. Our world is crumbling, right? Something's happening, a diagnosis, a financial struggle, some life issue, a death. Something has happened in our life. Things seemed like they're falling apart, and where is God? Right there. He's right there. And that's really what's being tested, isn't it? Our physical issues and our physical material circumstances are one thing, and there's difficulties. Notice he says that these trials fall upon us, or we encounter them. He's talking about things that come at us from the outside, things that we don't expect. This is a word that's used in other parts of Scripture as a ship that strikes a reef, right? The ship fell upon the rocks. The ship captain wasn't steering for the reef, was he? Probably didn't even know the reef was there. And then suddenly there's this catastrophe. There's this thing that's happened. And then what? Well, that's when our faith is being tested the most, isn't it? That's when our trust in God is being tested both. And I love the way our brother said it. It's a test of whether or not I'm going to stand next to God during this difficult time and lean on Him. But I also think the aspect of trusting that God is with us during that trial is really what's going on. And we should consider it joy. We should consider it gladness when these difficult things happen, because we know that the testing of our faith does something for us. There's an outcome to the testing of our faith. What does James say that it is here in verse 3? It produces, or depending on your translation, it works endurance. Do we need endurance? What do we need it for? Everything. Yeah. What do we need it for? So that we can keep going. So that we can keep pushing on even through trials, even through difficult times, right? What's going to get you through that difficult time? The strength that you need from yourself. Is it your own strength that we're depending on? How often do we depend on our own strength during those difficult times? One of the other things that I hear quite often is, well, I've done everything I can. It's time to turn it over to God. Ever hear something along those lines? Is that correct? You all laugh. There's lots of chuckling going on. What's wrong with that statement? God was there all the time, but did we turn it over to Him all the time? No, we trust in ourselves, don't we? We try to handle the trials. We try to handle the situation. We look at the situation and say, I can cope. I can deal with this. And we do everything in our power to fix it and to take care of it and to handle it. And once we realize that it's beyond our control, that's when we give it over to God. Shouldn't we flip that around? Shouldn't the very first thing we do be to give it to God and say, I don't know where this is going. I have no idea what the outcome of this is going to be. but I'm going to hold on to your hand, and I know you're going to hold on to mine. I know you're standing right next to me, and I'm going to stand right next to you. And whatever this is, we're going to get through this together, and you're going to lead me, and you're going to guide me. And you know what? It's all going to be okay. Do we believe that it's all going to be okay? What do we mean when we say that, though? When we say it's all going to be okay? What do we typically think? Okay, because God's will is always okay. But in the face of a difficulty, in the face of a trial, in the face of some catastrophe in our life, when we say it's all going to be okay, what do we mean? Yeah, that God's going to fix it all. Yeah, the outcome we want, right? This trial's going to end. God's going to take it away. What happens when he doesn't? Because did he promise to take away every trial? Did he promise to fix everything on this earth? I'm always mindful of Lazarus and the rich man. Did God take care of Lazarus? Funny, I'm reading in Scripture that he was laying in the gutter. The dogs were licking his sores. He was starving to death. All he wanted was the crumbs off the rich man's table. Did he get the crumbs off the rich man's table? Nope. God take care of him? How? He went to paradise when he left this earth. Sometimes the way God makes it okay is that we die in the trial. Do we not? I mean, there are some trials that we're going to face in our life that could take our lives, literally end our life on this earth. A cancer diagnosis, a brain tumor, whatever it could be, we may face a trial that we're looking at our mortality. And I would argue that in those moments, the trust and the test of our faith is probably the strongest, isn't it? Because you know what? I can't fix that. You can't reach in and fix your cancer. You can't reach in and remove your own tumor. You can't take care of these things. They're beyond our scope to deal with. And so what do we have to do? We have to commit ourselves to stand next to God and trust that he's standing next to us and that he's going to make it okay, even if it means that we leave this life. Because Lazarus's earthly situation was not fixed on the earth, was it? He didn't make it okay. He didn't get Lazarus out of the gutter. And I think our problem in a modern context sometimes is that when we say God's going to make it okay, we mean God's going to fix it the way I want it fixed. And that's not a test of our faith, that's a test of God, isn't it? Rather than a test of our trust in God, it's a test of God's willingness to do exactly what I want when I want it the way I want it. Did God promise to do that? I don't find that. I've looked because that would be really cool, right? You know, the God of creation will do anything I ask him to do. But I don't see that he's going to do anything outside of his will. And sometimes the answer to my situation is no. Then what? I mean, what happens when the answer is no? We should. I would argue we should. Do we? I hope so. I don't think we often do, though, as Christians. I meet Christians who are angry at God because of the trial that they're dealing with. I meet Christians that are demanding of God. Why? I'm thinking of a particular individual that contracted cancer very early in life, and the individual was very angry with God. Why would God do this to me? Why? You know, I've been faithful my whole life. Where is God? Why is he doing this? Did God give her cancer? Did God give us the trial? You see, these trials fall upon us, and sometimes I think our theology is that since God controls everything, if something's going wrong, that it's that God did it to us. And that's another thing that I don't see in Scripture. That's another thing theologically that I think we need to correct in our thinking, is that God does everything to us. We live in a fallen world, do we not? And if you go back to Genesis chapter 3, not only was man cast out of the garden and changed physically, they were now susceptible to death. Even the creation itself was changed, wasn't it? The ground would no longer give forth its fruit easily, and thorns and thistles and the sweat of your brow you will eat bread. I mean, the earth was physically changed at the fall of man as well. And with that fall, and with all of the things that we have added to this earth, guess what? We have diseases and things that God didn't give to us. I mean, God didn't give me a brain tumor. He doesn't give people cancer. He doesn't do these things to individuals in order to test their faith. But those things that are now part of this natural fallen world test our trust, don't they? And we've got to stop thinking that God is doing it to us. I'm not a political guy, and I don't mean this to sound political, but in some ways we're doing it to ourselves, are we not? With the foods we eat and the stuff we breathe and the junk that we're putting in our air. And this is not a green sermon, but we do a lot of things to this world, and then we say, you know, we've got childhood cancer. Why did God create childhood cancer? Well, I don't think God created childhood cancer. I think this environment did, right? But is he there when your child has cancer? And can he lead you through that trial of your child with cancer? Sir? It's very true. And I do like that terminology. I use that myself. He doesn't cause these things to happen. He allows them to happen. Okay, so why does he allow them? I mean, why doesn't he? Because that's a modern that's a modern concept. If God is all loving, why doesn't he step in and fix it? It's a test of what? Our faith. And what is faith? Our willingness to believe in him and understand his grace and his mercy. That's certainly part of it. But it's our trust. What does it mean to trust? Anybody ever, oh, thank you. Anybody ever do a trust fall? I don't know. We used to do that in teen retreat. We don't do that with adults very often because we wouldn't catch them probably, and we wouldn't fall, right? It's like, you know, what do you want me to do? Break my hip? I'm not going to do that. But you know what a trust fall is, right? Where you stand and people behind you and you trust that they're going to catch you. What is trust? Pardon? Reliance on. Okay. Reliance on what, though? I mean, what are we trusting in? This invisible being that... What are we trusting? Okay, we trust in what this word says, that it's truth. Sir. Okay, we trust his promises. Yes, we are counting on what was promised in Scripture, right? God has revealed himself to us through Scripture, hasn't he? Did he say he would watch over us? Yes. Will he? Yes. Even in the trials? Yes. Even in the difficult times? Yes. Even when you're sitting in that doctor's office and get a diagnosis you don't want? Yes. Even when you're at a funeral for a loved one that has died unexpectedly and you're grieving? Yes. Even when the money, even when the president, even when the war, even when, fill in the blank, even when... Faith is supposed to give us strength to endure the difficult times in our life. It's not just a hope in a future acknowledgement of a future eternity with God. That's certainly a big part of faith. But right now, today, it should strengthen us to walk in this world day by day, knowing that God is standing right next to us and that we are going to commit ourselves to standing right next to Him. And what is going to rip us away from God? As Christians, the answer to that should be nothing is going to rip me away from God. He does. He's working actively. He provides us with armor, doesn't he? Ephesians chapter 6. He gives us all kinds of things to protect us. But what does it take to leverage those things? Okay, obedience. But what have we been talking about all morning? Faith, trust, dependence, reliance on God. There's going to be nothing more important to you in that doctor's office at that moment than holding on to God's hand. There should be nothing more important to you when you're facing a trial in your life, financial, employment, we could have a conversation about all of these different trials that we experience, and we all have them. They're not going away. God never said He was going to take them away. But what has He said? I will walk with you through them. Hold on to my hand, I'll hold on to yours. You know, the other day I was watching our grandbabies. That's what we're here for. As you all know, everybody's like, we know why you're here. It's like, yep, the grandbabies. But I was watching the grandbabies hold Lolly's hand, walking down the street. Little Cassidy just reached up and grabbed her finger. Why'd she do that? I need something to hold on to. I'm not... she waddles. She's so cute, but she's not always all that steady on her feet, and there's cracks in the sidewalks. There's difficulties coming. She might trip, right? She might start to fall. What does she do? Holds on to Lolly, and guess what? I'm not going to fall. Folks, are we still holding on to God's finger? Yes, how tight? Because when we need them the most is when we need to consider it gladness when we're encountering various trials. Now, there's an interesting word here, and it's a word that I really love. And it's at the beginning of verse 2. Consider it all joy. What do you think of when you think of the word consider? What does it mean to consider something? Think about it. I always think of Winnie the Pooh sitting on his little think, right? I need to think about it as joy. I'm going through a trial. I need to think about it. Interestingly, this word is translated in other places in the New Testament as lead. That's interesting, isn't it? What does leading and thinking have to do with one another? What's he saying here? Using a word that is about leading. It's a choice. You see, we have to lead our mind to joy when we encounter trials, don't we? Not because of the trial. God is not expecting us to be glad that some terrible thing is happening in our life. He's just as sad about it as we are. But we know that the testing of our faith is going to make us stronger. That our relationship with God is going to be even more fortified when we get to the other side of this trial. And what am I going to be stronger for? What do I need endurance for? The next trial. Because the next one's coming, isn't it? I mean, we kind of get through one and we're like, glad that's over. Oh, all of a sudden there's another one right there. It doesn't take long sometimes, does it? And so we need to build endurance. We need to build the strength to continue to deal with the next trial and hold on to God that much tighter, knowing He's holding on to us. And we build endurance. And notice what he says, verse 3, knowing that the testing of your faith works endurance, produces endurance. And verse 4, and let endurance have its perfect work. That word result there is our same word, that same root as the word produces in verse 3. But let endurance have its perfect work, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. What do you think of when you think of the word perfect? What does perfect mean? Okay, I like that. That's not usually what we think of when we think of perfect. What do we think of when we think of perfect? Without flaw. That's not what the word means. And so it's nice to know here that you understand the meaning. He's not saying that endurance will get us to the point where we are without flaw. I wish that were true, don't you? I wish I could get to the point where I was without flaw. But why is it important for us to understand that we won't get to the point where we're without flaw? What are we not going to need if we get to the point where we're without flaw? We don't need God anymore, do we? We don't need Jesus' sacrifice anymore. I'm perfect. And as human beings, guess what happens? We start to get a swelled head even though we're not perfect, don't we? Even with all our flaws, we have ego problems and pride issues that cause us to feel like we're all that, and we know we're not. The word perfect really means complete, but it really is this idea of reaching a designed end. Becoming mature is really what the underlying word is talking about here. Endurance helps us to grow. It helps us to become mature. It helps us to grow, to become complete, but reaching a designed end. A good friend of mine, that one of my favorite teachers of all time, taught me about this word. And the word's teleos. It's a great Bible word. It shows up in a lot of places. But you need a Phillips head screwdriver to loosen a screw on something. And you go to the drawer, and in your drawer, you know that kitchen drawer where it's got all the junk and you're looking for that Phillips head screwdriver, and you find 15 flathead screwdrivers before you find the one. But you find one, and it's a Craftsman screwdriver, and it's still in its package. You never even opened it. Ever do that? You went and bought tools, and you never even got them open. Why do we do that? I did another class for another time. And so you open it, and it's perfect, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't have a scratch on it. It's brand new. The chrome is shiny and bright, and the handle is perfect. It's perfect. And you go and take it to the screw that you're trying to loosen, and the head of that Phillips screwdriver is too big for the screw. Ever find that? And some of us are so stubborn that we end up stripping the screw because we try to make that screwdriver that doesn't fit that screw loosen that screw anyway, right? That screwdriver is not perfect. It's flawless, but it's not perfect. It's not reaching its designed end, because its designed end is to work on a particular size screw, isn't it? And so you go back to the kitchen drawer and you rummage around a little bit longer, and you find this ancient, rusty screwdriver. You know, it's got an old wooden handle. Maybe it belonged to your dad back in the day, or your grandpa, and there's a crack in the wooden handle, and the shaft is all rusty. But you take it to that screw, and it fits that screw perfect. You know that feeling when it fits that screw just right, and you get the torque you need, and you loosen that screw. That screwdriver is perfect. It's reached its designed end, isn't it? You see, that's what God is telling us here through James, is that endurance helps us become perfect, not flawless, but it helps us become complete and mature. What will not happen to us if there aren't trials then? I mean, we kind of argue, why are there so many difficult things in the world? Why is there suffering in the world? If God is so loving, why are there hard times? What is this telling us? That hard times produce endurance, and endurance helps us mature. So what happens if there aren't hard times? We won't become mature. You know, Cassidy's a little beyond this age, but I like to watch little babies when they're trying to learn to walk. You know, they stand up and boom, and they hit the ground, right? Are they enduring a trial? They are for them, right? I want to stand up and my legs just aren't strong enough. What if the first time they fall down, they never try again? Because they're afraid of falling down. What's going to happen? They're never going to walk. Why? They're never going to build the endurance in those legs, the strength in those muscles to hold themselves up. And sometimes they bonk their heads, and sometimes they bonk their shoulders, and sometimes they cry. But you know what they always do? They always try again. And we always encourage them to try again. Isn't God encouraging us to try again? In the face of the trials that we're dealing with, what's being tested? That God's with us. And we do the same thing with that little baby. We're like, here, come here. I'll hold you. I'll help you. Trust me. Take a hold of my hand and I'll give you the little bit of a lift, right? You try to help them get to their legs and then you hold on to them for a minute. And the longer you do, the longer they get the strength in those legs. And eventually they're like, go away. I can do this on my own. Isn't that kind of what we do with God too? Don't we get strong enough that we go, go away. I can do this on my own. And then what happens? We get hit by a truck, right? Some trial in our life comes, and we're so far away from God that we either blame him or we accuse him or we feel like he's abandoned us or we feel like he's left us alone in the world to deal with these things. Who really left? We did, didn't we? And isn't that a sign of a lack of maturity on our part? I mean, we think maturity is growing to be an independent adult. Maybe in physical life that's true, but in spiritual life, we kind of grow to the point where we're like, go away, I don't need you anymore. And then when bad things happen, our world falls apart. And why? Because we're not standing right next to God, and we don't trust that he's standing right next to us. We're not perfect. We're not reaching maturity. We're not growing the way we should spiritually. And so James's point here is let endurance, let the strengthening of your spiritual muscles, if you will, have its perfect work, its mature work, its designed end. Endurance has a designed end, and that's to help you become perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. So how many of us are lacking in nothing? I mean, do you have everything? Do we all? I mean, I got everything, right? I am complete. There's nothing missing in my life. And if so, what are we chasing? Why do we seem so discontented as a culture if we're really growing to lack nothing in our lives? What does he mean when he says lacking in nothing? Does he mean materially? Does he mean that if we grow in endurance that we're not going to lack anything materially? And yet that's where all of our discontentment comes from, doesn't it? We don't have all of our stuff. There's more stuff. I want more stuff. I was in Africa one time and was trying to explain storage units to a student in Africa. And he said, wait a minute, you have a second house where you store stuff? I was like, no, it's not a house. It's this little box. It's about 10 feet wide. But at the time, we still had ancient stuff in a storage unit back in Arizona that belonged to my mom. It's about 10 feet wide, about 12 feet long. It's just a big box. You know what the guy told me? That's bigger than my house. And what do you put in that house? Stuff that you haven't looked at in 20 years? And yet we lack contentment because we don't have enough stuff. You see, that's another verse I don't see, is that this promise isn't lacking in nothing as far as materially, but he says that endurance has its result that we will lack in nothing spiritually, won't we? We will lack nothing that we need to face the next trial. That's really the context here, isn't it? Look at verse 12 with me for just a second. We're going to skip all the way to the end of the section on trials here, because he says, blessed is the man approved of God. That's what the word blessed means. Blessed is the man who perseveres, endures under trial. For once he has been approved, once he has passed the test, he will receive the crown of life which the Lord has promised to those who love him. So when he's talking about lacking in nothing, he's still talking in the context of trials. He's talking about persevering through trials all the way through verse 12. And so he's talking about lacking nothing in dealing with the trials of life. God and trust in Him provides us everything you need to get through the next difficulty. Does it always feel that way? Aren't some of the difficulties big? I mean, they look huge. One of the things a phrase that I've always taught my kids, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You don't look at the elephant, right? Sometimes we see the trial and it's like, oh my goodness. It's too big. And we become overwhelmed, don't we? Why?
Because we forget that God is our all in all.
That He's standing right now. Is the trial too big for God? Is any trial too big for God? And is He going to watch over me through the trial? Do I trust that? Do I live like I trust that? Or am I freaked out? Because see, honestly, and trust me, I'm not trying to say that in the face of a difficulty, we shouldn't have an emotional reaction. We do. Jesus in the garden was anxious. I mean, when you read the garden account, Jesus was stressed out. Did He not have faith? Of course He did. But He knew what was coming, and it was overwhelming. He was looking at the elephant, wasn't He? And He prayed to God, I don't want to have to eat this elephant. I'm not trying to downplay what Jesus went through with an elephant, analogy here. But I don't want to go through this trial. But I'm going to follow your will, not mine. And what did He know? What did He trust in? That God's going to be right next to him the whole time. And that he's going to stand right next to God the whole time. And God's will be done. And in that trial, God will be glorified. And so will he. Folks, it's true for us too. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I don't know if you could hear that. I know it's hard to hear in the auditorium, and I'll paraphrase, but excellent point. We need to be talking to God and building our relationship with God in the moments where it's not urgent, right? In the good times. Because we need to be able to recognize him in the bad times. If we don't, if we just go through life and we only need him when things are bad, we're not going to recognize him when he shows up because we haven't seen him in a while. I don't really know what you look like. It's working on that relationship all the time that is, notice it's a testing of our faith. We should always have faith in the good times and the bad times, trusting in God. If good things are happening to you, who did it? God's involved in those good times too, isn't he? I mean, we only look at him in the bad times. Why are you doing this to me? Well, do you remember when I blessed you a while back? And we just kind of say, well, he does good things and he does bad things, and we just got to figure out. No. We got to have that relationship all the time so that we understand that relationship. And when we need it in difficult times, he's there to hold on to. Excellent point. So he says that we are lacking in nothing. That's the goal. Verse 5. But. There is no bigger word in Scripture than but. Because it's a contrasting conjunction. He wants us to be lacking in nothing. But if any of you lacks, what's the assumption here? That you're going to lack some things sometimes, right? If any of you lacks wisdom, okay, so now we got another Bible word we got to define. What is wisdom? Wisdom. What is wisdom? Knowledge with experience. Oh, that's too early. Does knowledge with experience always produce wisdom? Not always. Sir, brother, you had a... You got 5 minutes. Yeah, I heard it. So what is wisdom? Knowledge with experience is part of it, ma'am. Yeah, that's part of it, isn't it? Is the ability to see good and evil. The best way to define wisdom is to see things the way God sees them, right and wrong, good and evil, and act accordingly. To live according to that standard, not our own. Because we look at things and kind of go, hey, I know how this works, right? And we're wrong. It's usually when a trial comes, right? As we kind of think we know all that, and we're on our own, and we left God's hand a little while ago, and we're walking in the world, and then we get hit by a truck, and we don't know what to do, right? So if any of you lacks wisdom about what? What's our context here? Okay, it's about our faith, but our faith in the face of what? Trials. If any of you lacks wisdom about the trial that you're dealing with, and isn't that what we want? When we have something bad happen, we want to know how it's going to turn out, don't we? I mean, that's what makes it scary for us. That's what makes it uncertain, is I don't know what this is going to do. I just lost my job. How am I going to fill in the blank? How am I going to pay for my food? How am I going to pay for my rent? How am I going to put gas on my car? A million things, right? I just got this diagnosis. What's the outcome? I want to know. I want wisdom. I want knowledge about where this is going. And you know what? We don't always have that. But if I look at it the way God looks at it and recognize that there's a spiritual component to this physical trial, what do I know? How's it going to turn out? Is it going to turn out okay? Do we believe that? I mean, in our core of cores, do we believe that? Even if the trial takes my life, it's going to be okay? Even if the trial causes me to lose my physical existence, it's going to be okay? Do we really believe that? Because sometimes I think we like to say that in this building on Sunday mornings. But out there where the real trials happen, we don't always live that way. Because it's scary, isn't it? We don't know how this is going to turn out, but what do I know? I know that God's going to stand right next to me, and I'm going to stand right next to Him, and nothing is going to rip me away from Him. And even if this trial is the worst outcome I can think of, which in our life is the ending of our lives, that seems to be the worst thing we can imagine. Is there a worse thing to imagine? What's the worst thing to imagine? That we walk away from God and we not only lose this life, but we lose eternity with Him because we didn't trust in Him, because we didn't hold on to Him, and we tried to do it all ourselves, and we made such a mess of it, and we feel like there's no way back, and there's nothing we can do, and we're back to overwhelmed and confused. And what do we need? We need to trust that He's standing right next to us, and He's got His hand out. What do you got to do? Just reach out and hold His finger. Just hold on, because you're not as stable as you think you are. And there's cracks in the sidewalk, and you're going to get there. But if you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all generously and without reproach. He's not going to rebuke you for asking. Help me see this your way, God, and help me get through it. And what's the promise? He will. Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials. Not in the trial, but knowing that the testing of your faith makes you stronger. And in that strength, you'll become more mature. And in that maturity, you can have the spiritual wisdom to know that God's walking with you. And you, as long as you walk next to Him, there's nothing that can take you out of His hand, and there's nothing you can't handle because He's going to handle it with you. Right? Thanks for coming this morning. They hold on tight. God's finger's going to be purple at the end by the end of this because I ain't letting go. All right, thank you.